Question for this week. I have been producing for about 3 years. What shall I focus on the most at this moment? Oh, this is techno, and oh, this is tech house, and oh no, this is progressive house. I really do struggle with structure. What's the best way to approach a filter sweep? Now that we've talked about something nice, let's talk about, oh god, here we go, drug addiction in the music industry. What would your arguments if you wanted to convince an Ableton user to switch to Bitwig be? Hey guys, welcome to the Kane audio vlog. It's Friday apparently, so it's time for another Ask Me Anything. Usual rules apply, comment anything you want below this video and I'll get back to you in next week's video. Before I look at last week's video, is there any house admin? Other than thanks to everyone that came to the Mousetrap party in London last night. It was awesome. I had a really good time. Unfortunately, I had to leave early because I had to catch a train back to Manchester. So I didn't see how it carried on. I assume it carried on as it started, which is a good thing. Yeah, I think that's all house admin there is. Yeah, I'm just looking now. Oh, I've updated the Spotify playlist, so for those of you that follow my Spotify playlist, which is called Tonal Display, yeah, that's been fully updated yesterday, so if you're looking for a couple of hours worth of cool music, then please do check that out. Other than that, I can't think straight. Unfortunately, last week was a difficult one because I'd been off for the week and had a newborn baby. This week, still got a newborn baby, obviously, and have had a late night last night doing the gig. So, not that my brain's ever working on full form, but there we go. Starting at the top. Herman Cattree, Ferrari, congratulations on the new baby. Thank you very much. Question for this week. I have been producing for about 3 years. What shall I focus on the most at this moment? I understand that these are all essential, but would love to figure out what my main motive should be. Okay, A, creating more tracks. B, focusing on one particular type of sound genre and getting good at or trying various other genres. C, learning new techniques such as more sound design sessions, learning more music theory. D, more focus on mixing and mastering, making my existing tracks sound professional. E, reaching out to labels / channels. I would say A, creating more tracks. If you've been doing it for 3... Well, look, okay, so it's kind of a difficult one to answer because some people become amazing producers in 6 months, bastards. Whereas other people, like myself, take years and years and years to get halfway decent. So I think that's kind of I don't think there's one answer for everyone. I don't think there's a blanket answer. But I think we all need to be very careful that we're not pitching to labels too soon, because if you start pitching work to your favourite record label before you're ready, then it might take a long time for you to get back into it, and you know you're no longer fresh and new and exciting to them, so they're maybe less likely to listen a second time if you weren't right the first time. I don't know. It's a tricky one. So for me personally, I think creating more tracks is probably one of the most important things you can do. And I've always been an advocate of making music that is not for release. Purposefully, you know, sit down and tell yourself, today I'm going to write a piece of music that is 3-4 minutes long, and I'm not going to send it to anyone. It's not for people in a nightclub. It's not for a record label. It's not for any kind of release. It's not for any DJs to play. It's not for anybody to listen to. It's for me. And I think that's probably the most important thing you can do, because that's how you will find what genre you're most comfortable in. So that answers your part B. Doing that, you'll also start to discover which sounds work with your music and which sounds don't, and how to make those sounds and how to tweak those sounds. So that covers your part C of learning sound design. And getting, repeating that whole process, and don't, if you find something that does work, don't have a template, don't save a template, don't use those same things twice. So if, for example, you find a drum loop or a drum clap or a kick or whatever that you think, this track's a banger, when you then open up a new project and you start another one, don't drag that kick into it, or that clap, or that drum loop, or whatever it is that you had. Try not to repeat that by copy pasting. Try to repeat it by finding another one that's maybe similar, or tweaking the original one so it sounds different, or just progressing with it. And when it comes to the sound design, start from scratch again. If you used a preset, and that's fine. But if you made a sound from scratch, try not to open that in your next project. Try to maybe make something similar but slightly different, because that's where you find the happy accidents. That's where you're going to find sometimes you might turn the wrong dial, and all of a sudden you think, damn, this sounds even better, so that's kind of what you're looking for, I think, in the learning stage. So I would say all of them are kind of essential, but some more than others. Without knowing where you are in terms of quality of production and everything, I would say A every time. I mean, for the most part, for most people asking that question, I would say A. Creating more tracks is probably the most important thing you can do. Focusing on sound, genre, getting good at various genres. Trying various genres is always good, especially if, like me, you like a lot of different genres, but focusing on one particular type of sound and genre, I don't think that's really important. I don't think it's important for anyone, and I don't care if you're, super famous or not. It makes no difference. If you want to change the style of your sound or genre or whatever, go for it. If that's what you want to do, at the end of the day, you're an artist producing art. That is what is important from my view. I will, as a DJ, sometimes if I'm for example, I did a gig a few weeks ago in Nostock Festival. I played the closing set, so I played full on, what I would consider full on techno by my standards. I have a range of sounds, and the Nostock set was pretty much full on, and I ended the night by backspinning out of a tune and just dropping the original Prodigy Firestarter, because why not? It's a great track. And obviously he died this year, so I thought I'd pay homage to that, and as the last track I'll just play Firestarter original version through and through, which is like 140 BPM or something. So genre kind of doesn't come into it. And then if you take last night, for example, at the Mousetrap party, I was playing the opening set, so I was the opposite end of the spectrum. So where I say I have a range, last night I was playing far more melodic, progressive, I don't know what the word is, but almost French, I guess, to an extent, which is not something I tend to play very often. But for an opening set, I find it just gets the spirit lifted a bit, and gets people in the mood. So and it went down a treat. So I think, well, in fact, the fact that I can't even describe the genre probably says everything you need to know about getting particular at one genre. Well, forget genres. I always have an issue where you'll see it on so many YouTube videos, in fact, of music videos, and people will be arguing about what genre it is, and oh, this is techno, and oh, this is tech house, and oh no, this is progressive house, and whatever. Who cares? Nobody cares. I sure as shit don't care. And I think it's important to not care about that, because it really doesn't matter. So yeah, so that's that. Learning new techniques such as sound designs and music theory. I do think that those things are very important, both of them. But I also think that if it sounds good, it sounds good. And it doesn't matter if it was a preset or if you just went with a generic chord progression that you know works every time. If it sounds good, it sounds good. So you don't need to be a master of sound design or a master of music theory to be able to create good music or good art. And I think that's important to remember, that I'm a huge fan of sound design. Obviously, I'm a sound designer. I'm also a huge fan of music theory. But I would always say that, good music is good music, regardless of whether it meets that criteria or not. What else did you say? Focus on mixing, mastering, making my existing tracks sound professional. I mean, yes, but I'm not saying anything about your music because I haven't heard your music. But as we all say, you can't polish a turd. At the end of the day, if you've put together a terrible piece of music, then it doesn't matter how good your mixing and mastering is. It's still a terrible piece of music, albeit well mixed and mastered. So for me, mixing and mastering it's not the least priority thing, but well, no, actually it probably is. Yeah, it's probably the lowest priority from my perspective. The other thing, don't forget, is that if you've put together a track and you think this track is amazing, this is gonna go places, and you've got a label that love it, or something like that, then you can always get it professionally mixed and mastered. We don't have to be mix engineers and mastering engineers ourselves. Not everybody has the right room for it. Not everybody has the right equipment for it. Not everybody has the right ears for it. And you need to accept that. Some people just aren't cut out for it. And I think we as humans are pretty bad at accepting what we can and can't do, particularly what we can't do. I think we're a bit crap at that. I had a friend once who did probably 10, 15 driving lessons and then just quit. And he said, no, I'm not going to drive, which I don't know what country you're from, but in British culture, that's a bit of an odd thing, because as soon as you hit 17, you do your driving test, or most people, the vast majority of people, unless you live in a big city like London, and even then, you still probably do your test. Generally when you're 17, everyone goes and does their test and gets driving and gets a car and whatever, and has that freedom of movement. But no, a friend of mine had decided, I'm just not cut out for driving. I can't get pedals and hands. Again, in Britain, we use manual. That's normal. I know a lot of you guys watching this are American, and you see what you call a stick shift as a weird thing. In Britain, that's pretty much all cars. But yeah, so my friend was basically going, I can't get the pedals and the stick and the wheel and look at other things on the road. I'm just not cut out for that. So he never bothered. Which you got to say, well, fair enough. So the same goes for mixing and mastering, I think. If you don't have the ears or the room or the equipment or whatever, if you don't have the right setup for mixing and mastering, then I would say don't bother mixing and mastering, don't bother trying. Learn everything else first, basically, because mixing and mastering, you can always get a mixer or a mastering engineer, or even swap it with friends who do have that skill, and maybe you have a better skill at something than them, and you can swap tracks, so it's not impossible to get around that bit. And then finally, reaching out to labels. I kind of covered that in the first one in saying that you have to be careful in reaching out to labels and not doing it too soon. And I'm a firm believer that if your end goal is something like Mousetrap, for example, then you need to set some stepping stones in place. You know, maybe have a look at how other Mousetrap artists got onto the label and how where they were releasing beforehand. Is there a pattern forming? And I genuinely don't know the answer to that, because my story is probably a bit different to others. But the rule is still generally the same, in that if you can spot a pattern and see where other artists kind of got their foot in the door, or did they all release a successful single on this other record label first. You know, I think you have to set, with every major goal in life, you need to set stepping stones, and that's the most important part of your goal, is the path there. So yeah, that's what I would say. Unknown artist, hi Dom, hello. First off, massive congratulations to you and your better half on the birth of your baby boy. Thank you very much. I have 4 children with the same woman, I may add. Bloody hard work, but wouldn't change a thing. Good. Yeah, it's been great so far, to be honest. They're both amazing. Been a while since posting, but have been hanging in the background, I promise. Loving producing music at the moment, but I really do struggle with structure. I'm trying to replicate something along the lines of a stoic introduction, i.e. not a typical beat intro, and I've always been shit with structure and can't get my head around it. Any tips would be appreciated. So, I can see you've written more. All the best, mate. We'll hopefully be attending the Mousetrap party in London. You should have come and said hello. Although I wasn't able to hang around too long there, so that's a shame. Would have been great to meet up with some of you guys. With Stoic, I kind of took that approach the same as you. It was that I didn't want it to be just a generic, here's an intro for a DJ that's basically, 32 bars of beats and then the bass line kicks in. And in fact, with Stoic, I think it's like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes before the beat comes in, which is maybe pushing it a bit, but I think I sort of treat it as a breakdown and build up and drop. It's just that your track starts at the breakdown moment. The other way to look at it from a writing perspective is, I guess, a good way to introduce your track is to sort of build tension. So start with something that maybe doesn't have too much timing. So for example, the long pads, and then maybe trickle in an extra layer or two. That could be a melody, it could be a bass line, it could be just something that introduces a slight rhythm. And I think that's kind of what you do when you're building that I'm saying tension now. I don't think I mean tension. You're building energy, I suppose. And start with perhaps the least rhythmic part of the music, because that's your nice, gentle introduction. And then develop the rhythm. So, for example, I start with the pads, and then I'll bring in maybe a melody or two, maybe a few crash cymbals here and there, but just very subtle, some effects in the background. And then moving forward, I'd bring in maybe a subtle giving it all away by having everything smashing in at once. I think that's kind of how I approach the structure, almost as though you're sort of teasing it to the listener. You're almost sort of telling a story. There needs to be a narrative of things coming in. And again, it depends on the vibe of the track. There are certain tracks where all of that needs to happen quite quickly and then explode. And there are other tracks where that can happen quite gently and subtly. So, for example, with Stoic, I wanted it to be a really long intro because I slip in and out of scale and sort of play with the music theory of that. And there's actually like 5 or 6 synths going on playing pretty much the same notes, but only 1 or 2 of those are slipping out of scale. And I needed that to fade in gently so that it rather than just sounding awkward on the first rotation, it's the maybe fourth or fifth rotation that it starts to go, oh, that's starting to do something now. So yeah, I think that's my tip for structure when it comes to starting a track without the drums. Yeah, Andrew Hollis, Ferrari, high five. Congrats on becoming a dad. Thank you very much. Read more. Question around mixdowns. If you were taking the approach to bounce to a different DAW, what's the best way to approach a filter sweep? For example, a low-pass drum intro. Obviously in the DAW you have done the arrangement, you've grouped or used a send to do the low-pass filter sweep. Yeah, in the mixdown DAW, do you not import the original group sound and recreate the filter group again, just in case you need to rebalance mix the drums? So yeah, that's what I would do. Yeah, so I think because of the technique I use in exporting stems and re-importing to, well, either the same DAW or a different DAW, I use a different one, just because I like a different mindset. But I've always recommended to people to start a mixdown by exporting all your stems and re-importing them as stems, as audio stems, so that you're now entirely focused on the mixdown. So as you're pointing out, if you've got the big filter sweep on your master channel, I assume, or maybe a drum bus, then when it comes to importing that, you're not, you've exported the stems, so you're not importing as a group channel or a bus channel or a master channel, so you're going to have lost that filter sweep. Because I've been doing that technique for so long, I forget that people do that with a master channel. I never put any filters on my masters, and that's probably the reason why, is because it just gets horribly confusing when I then re-import it. However, if there was a track where I wanted to do that, that's exactly what I would do. I would re-import them as stems and then just recreate that filter sweep. I don't like to touch the master, but whatever, if you've done that, then do that, or create a bus group and then apply filter sweep to that. I have been known to apply effects to multiple channels, let's say some automated reverb or something, and I will literally just copy and paste that reverb from one channel across 5 channels with its automation, which is technically 5 times the work, I know, but usually by that point, if I'm doing something like that, I've kind of done most of the arrangement anyway, so when it comes to then just copying and pasting the arrangement, and again in Bitwig you just hit number 2, highlight the arrangement, copy and paste it on a different channel, and away you go. So it's pretty easy these days to copy and paste automation. Yeah, so I tend to favour doing that. And also I find there was something I did this on recently. Was it Stoic? I don't think it was. I can't remember what it was. There was something I did recently where I found I must have been doing a high pass or low pass filter, probably a sweep now you mention it, on maybe, let's say, 2 or 3 different instruments. And I think I'd noticed that the cutoff point was changing the energy value on different instruments at different points. So let's say, for example, I'm doing a high pass filter sweep and I'm sweeping up to make it thinner. And I'm doing that across, let's say, hi-hats, kicks. And let's just call it hi-hats and kicks, because that's good enough for this demonstration purpose. When you are filter sweeping a hi-hat, it's not going to have any effect until what, 5 kilohertz, 10 kilohertz? Whereas when you're high pass filtering kicks, it's going to have an effect almost instantly from, say, 50 hertz upwards. You're already losing all the energy. So to filter sweep while I get, this is not always the case, but for me to filter sweep the master or a bus, the drum bus or whatever, it's going to have a bigger impact on the kick drums. The kick drums are going to be long gone by the time it gets to filtering out the hats. So to be able to filter them out and lose energy at the same kind of constant, then you'd want the same angle of automation, the same curve, but you'd want them in very different starting places. So again, I find it easier if you're going to be doing that sort of thing, rather than having a filter sweep on your master. I prefer to have 6 or 7 filter sweeps on the individual instruments, and you will find every now and then, even if they're all pretty much the same and you're wanting, maybe it's a bandpass or something, so you want them in the same place, you might find that one of the instruments resonates just at a slightly different position, and if you're filter sweeping 6 different instruments at the same time with 6 different filters, then you've got control over that resonant point. So on that one instrument that's resonating in a ugly area, you've now got control over that, and you can change that and have the starting point lower or higher or whatever it is that works for you in that track. So I think personally I prefer that extra control. It's a bit more work, but that's how I tend to do it anyway. So hopefully that makes sense. I can see my camera is about to hit the 30-minute mark, so I'm just going to hit reset. And I'm back. Righty, where do we get to? Rod Marconi. Thanks for another interesting AMA, and congratulations on the birth of your little boy, Dom. Ferrari, high five. Herman Catry. Hi, Dom. Sorry to bother you with a second question. Oh, especially after I said last week. But this just popped up in my mind, and don't want to wait till next week, as it might slip away. Won't mind if you answer it 1 week later, but now that I have commented, I won't. Right, well, I've just wasted more time reading all of this. Question. Since this is a creative field, do you suggest sticking to a schedule or moving with the flow and working only when one feels creative? Yeah, so I guess it's different for different people. I kind of have a schedule where my work is, I say 9 to 5. It's not 9 to 5. It's more like 8 in the morning till maybe 8 or 9 at night sometimes. But I say 9 to 5, and I try and keep it around that. And I try and keep it Monday to Friday, but actually I do a lot of Saturdays as well. But being self-employed, there is always something that can be done, whether that's updating a website, updating your biography, doing something on social media, maybe starting a conversation with someone about an idea you've had, maybe a client or something like that. There's just always stuff that can be done. So I don't think I ever have a moment where there's nothing to do. I don't think that's ever happened in 15 odd years of being self-employed. But there are definitely times where I'm feeling creative, and there are definitely times where I'm not feeling creative. Excuse the noise if you can hear that. I don't even know what that is. I guess someone's running some water or something, which seems noisier than normal. So I think you have to let yourself get to that creative stage. And I think, I've mentioned this before, creativity is not something we can control. It's not something I can't tell myself, right, tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'm going to be really creative, and I'm going to write a masterpiece symphony. It's just that's not how it works, so, and I've said before about, if you're going to be taking breaks, then there is a difference. If you take a break doing something that can maybe inspire you to do something creative. So for me, watching a sci-fi film and listening to sci-fi soundtracks, quite often there's just an idea, or even if I see a visual that makes me think of a sound or something, it just makes me go ooh, and I'll run to the studio and I'll start throwing down ideas. So I think it's one of these things that we can't really control. So but I guess it's different for different people. There are probably some people out there who are incredibly lucky, who are just naturally creative all the time, and in which case they can stick to a schedule, and good for them. But I'm not one of those people. Ricky John, Ferrari, high five. Congratulations to you and the family on the newest edition, Dom. Zombo's question above, have we read Zombo's? No, it's down below. Reminded me of something I'd forgotten to ask ages ago. Right, let's see Zombo's question first. Zombo, congrats on your baby, Dom. Now that we've talked about something nice, let's talk about, oh God, here we go, drug addiction in the music industry. I know it's dark, but I recently saw a post from Wolfgang Gartner saying that he's addicted to some substance and is going to rehab, which really bummed me out. And I was just wanting to know your opinion on this. And is it really that easy to get drugs like Backstage and Vans, maybe fans? I don't know. Thank you, Dom, and have a nice weekend. Yeah, it's easy. So I don't have any secrets necessarily. So I'm a child of the 80s and a raver of the 90s. Of course I've done drugs. You know, it would be weird if I didn't, I think, or not weird, uncommon, I would say. Look, I grew up around the free party scene and the whole illegal rave scene. So it was rife, it was everywhere. You know, as a clubber, that was a thing. As a DJ then, doing events, it was everywhere. And I remember at the beginning, it was... I don't think I ever took anything before a set, because I don't think I was that stupid, and I think it's a really dumb thing to do. But I do remember pretty much at the very beginning, you know, that would be first port of call after my set. And because of that, and I think don't get me wrong, as much as I say it's a dumb thing to do, it's also quite a common thing to do for a lot of DJs, that, you know, they'll drop a pill or whatever before doing a set. And I think that's really dumb, because I think you're going to be loving your set, but who knows what the crowd think. I just think that's really dumb. Look, we've all seen a few videos banding around recently from various cool DJs. One very famous minimal techno DJ, I don't even need to say his name, you know who he is. You know, just doing really stupid shit. And there's those, I don't even know his name, to be honest. I don't follow that scene, it's way too cool for me. But you know, the whole too cool for school scene, there's a few DJs there, and it's horrible mixes, horrible track selection. Maybe that's part of their thing, I don't know. But you know, they're quite clearly wasted. And as much as it pains me to see all of that, I can also understand how they got there. I have some very good friends who are very well known, who have suffered from, or will always suffer from, addiction. You know, it's there. I don't know if it's more common amongst musicians than anyone else, but I do think it's perhaps pretty easy to get into. You know, when I was doing the London circuit in particular, when I was heavily doing the London circuit, meaning almost every weekend I was around various clubs around London, there were certain clubs in particular that I guess probably, you know, the owners or the management or security or whatever kind of just turned a blind eye to the DJs. And there were definitely instances where I remember being in some clubs and there was a plate of Coke under the DJ booth, you know, under the decks, and it was just, that was kind of, you know, where you, in most DJ booths in most clubs, you have like a little mini fridge or whatever full of Red Bull and then water, and then there'll be another one full of beers or whatever, and then you know, obviously headline acts and whatever will have their own rider, so there's usually their rider fridge is full of whatever Grey Goose vodka or whatever it is these people drink. But yeah, quite often on top of that, what they don't tell you is, there's a plate of cocaine or whatever, and they tend to help themselves to that. It's not always a plate, admittedly, but there's usually someone with at least 8 grams of coke on them or whatever, and it's just being passed around. So it's not unusual for these things to happen. However, what I will say, in a maybe slightly less depressing thing and hopefully somewhat motivational thing, is that the guys at the absolute top of their game, the DJs who I have absolutely aspired to become a part of and represent and be in with, pretty much all of the top players are nearly teetotal, and I think that tells you probably everything you really need to know about this game. There are people at the bottom who will be pushing that whole sort of drug thing and whatever, and it's all about image and it's all about looking cool and peer pressure and all of that bollocks. Then there are people in the middle ground where it's kind of 50-50, it's just a bit of chaos, I suppose. And then there are people at the top of the game who genuinely deserve respect because they're not interested in any of that. So I think if you're looking to become top of the game, it's something to bear in mind. And it's just so easy to fall down that slope. Luckily, I never had any kind of addictive personality or anything, but there are people out there where it's a weakness. It's just part of their conditioning or part of their genetics or whatever, and it happens. Some people are just really easily addicted to certain substances, so and I guess you don't know that until it's too late for a lot of people. So yeah, it can be quite a bummer, to be honest. And I didn't realise Wolfgang Gartner was a substance kind of guy, but again, not a huge surprise. Good that he's going to rehab. Also, I think good that he's talking about it publicly. I think these things are important. There are a couple of guys I know that I've just kind of mentioned who are at the top of the game and have gone through rehab. And I know they talk about these things publicly in terms of a closed Facebook friends type thing, but I'm not going to mention names because I don't know if they talk about it publicly. So I think that would be unfair. But there are probably a lot more than you'd think, unfortunately. But also, I think on a more positive note, it's maybe becoming less and less these days, because as much as we bitch and moan about this, the good side of the music industry being more and more corporate and more business driven is that the DJs and producers, the entertainers, are now kind of having to have a business acumen and mindset for that. So, gone are the days, well, not gone, but going are the days where, it was just all about having a particular talent and you just got booked and they'd turn a blind eye to the drugs and whatever, I know full well back in the day, one of my old flatmates used to work for, again, I won't say names, but a very, very big major record label in the UK, and his job was basically trying to get record shops to stock particular tracks. So he'd go round to the big stores and go, we've signed this artist, they've got an album coming out, it's going to be a huge success, you want to get as much stock as you can now while stocks last, sort of thing. And he would be sort of telling the bosses of the record stores what's big, what's not big, where it's going and whatever, and that was kind of his job, was basically corporate sales stuff. And part of his job was hiring a yacht and getting a lot of these bosses off their face and convincing them that whatever X, Y and Z was the next big thing. So I think pretty much gone are those days. Probably don't have the budget for that these days. They certainly don't have a cocaine budget. But but that's kind of how it was. So I think we need to understand that that transition of culture is not going to be instant. Personally, I don't even drink these days, mostly because I just don't like the feeling of being drunk, and I like, as most of you know, I love driving fast cars, and I need a clear mind for that. I can't, if I'm going on a track day or something and driving a fast car very fast, it needs split-second judgments, and if I've been drinking the night or even 2 nights before, I can feel there's a definite loss or delay in judgment. So it's a big thing for me. As much as I love a good beer, and I've recently discovered a few craft ales that are alcohol free, and I'm loving them. And in fact, last night in London, found a couple of nice alcohol free beers, so that was quite nice. Anyway, I digress. It really is easy to get drugs backstage. I think it's becoming less so these days. But I should imagine if you were a big player then and you wanted drugs, then you could probably get it pretty much instantaneously. It's just the way the industry is. It's part of the entertainment industry, and I kind of get that some people kind of need that Dutch courage and whatever to get on stage. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, for me, back in the day, I kind of felt like there was a time where I felt like I didn't want to go out clubbing without a certain something, and I kind of got to a stage where I thought, hang on, I'm supposed to love music for the sake of loving music, and why am I doing this? So yeah, that was that. Anyway, then we'll go back to Ricky John. Right, so Zombo's question above reminded me of something I've forgotten to ask ages ago. Do you think there is a connection between creative people and poor mental health? Or is this connection more in success and the struggles and strains that come with it? I sometimes wonder if people don't seek help due to fear of ostracization, I can't say that, or being stigmatized, or if by that point they stopped caring. I suppose this also assumes that the services are easy to reach and are of decent quality, which is probably often not the case. Sorry if that's a bit of a downer question. Have a great weekend. We're all on downers this weekend, aren't we? Right. So, do I think there's a connection between creative people and mental health? I think there maybe is, but I'm careful not to say definitely, because actually I feel like that might be what we call a cognitive bias, where we just get told that, musicians are, really emotional or something, is what people often say. And you go, oh yeah, and then so every time you see a musician, I don't know, crying or something, you then go, oh yeah, they are really emotional. Whereas actually we're not comparing that to non-musicians. Are they more emotional? Do we have the numbers? Probably not. So I think that mental health is a serious issue in the music industry. But the reason I can say that for definite is because mental health is a serious issue in life outside of the music industry, and I don't think it's any better in the music industry, and I don't know if it's any worse. So yeah, so I think it's something that we all need to be talking more about these days. Is it connection to in success and the struggles and strains that come with it? I don't think so, if I'm honest. I don't think it's related to success. I think that as a musician and as an artist, I think we are taught to self-question our own techniques and motives. And I think sometimes that can have negative connotations that come with it. But I don't think that it's necessarily related to success, because I think there are probably just as many accountants who want to be the best accountant out there or whatever. who maybe become financial officers for huge corporations, and they deal with lots of stress and whatever. So I don't think it's specific to music, and I don't think it's necessarily specific to success. I think, in fact, I did read some research many years ago, and it was basically showing that in most corporations, the top level management tend to have far less stress than the lowest paid workers. So if anything, I would say it's probably an inverse correlation to success. I should imagine that the more successful people in reality suffer less, as much as we don't want that to be true because we're humans and we're all very jealous. Sometimes wonder if people don't seek help due to fear of being stigmatized. Yeah, I think that's true for everyone, and I think it's without wanting to start any kind of gender war, I think it's specifically the case for men who, we often get told to man up, for example. Well, what the fuck does that mean, man up? Basically means stop being in touch with your own emotions, stop feeling pain like a human being. What's that? I don't get why anyone would say that. I don't get. I don't understand why anybody would think that losing touch with your own emotions and not feeling pain is a good thing. To me, that just seems really dumb. So I think, we all, and I think, and I hate to say this, but unfortunately the music industry seems, especially electronic dance music industry, seems the vast majority are men. I mean, look at the comments on this video that I'm recording right now. I can almost guarantee you 99.999% of them are men. I looked at my YouTube statistics. It's kind of weird because I do look at the statistics sometimes, and on my Spotify listeners, for example, it's kind of maybe, say, 60% male, maybe 70% male. If I look at Facebook fans, it's more like 70 or 80% male. And if I look at YouTube, it's like 99% male, which I find strange because I think anyone who's a long-term viewer of my videos will probably understand that I'm a pretty liberal person. I don't do anything misogynistic. I'm very careful in how I am in life. So I like to think I'm accessible to all ages, races, genders, whatever. I don't care for someone's colour, race, creed, gender, whatever. And I think that's an interesting thing, because that shows how, if I'm that accessible and still 99% male viewed, then there's something wrong somewhere, and I don't know. I don't think it's anything I'm doing. I don't know if it's a YouTube thing or if it's a societal thing. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know if it's a music industry thing, but I feel like maybe it's actually all of the above, and at every step of the way, there's like one extra barrier for females, and I don't know what those things are because I'm not a woman myself, so I can't speak on their behalf. But I just think it's an interesting thing. So bringing that back to mental health, I think men as a whole, as a sweeping general statement, I think men are very often told to man up and be a man and all of that. And you've got to ask yourself, what the fuck does that mean? Does that mean you're not allowed to be cold on a cold day? Well, if a thermometer says it's cold, it's fucking cold. If you're cold, put a coat on. I can't bear people who refuse to put a coat on because pain is a sign of weakness or something. To me, it just makes no sense. Anyway, so I think we as people, and in this industry and in society in general, we need to be far more open about mental health issues, and I think we need to be far more understanding of different people having different wirings in their head, and different people having different requirements and different thresholds. And that's the most important bit. Just because you had something happen to you in your life and you're okay, doesn't mean that everybody else has to be exactly the same, because we're not identical replicas, and different people have different things happen at different points in their life, and different thresholds have different triggers, and there is just so many varying factors that we shouldn't ever begin to judge anybody on one simple instance like that. So I think we all need to be fairly careful, and I know that there are a lot of people out there who hate the whole gender politics, and they hate the whole liberal progressiveness of, oh, you can't say anything these days in case you offend someone. Well, maybe don't be a dick and don't offend people. Like, it's not that difficult. If you're offended at not being allowed to offend people, then that's just pretty weird, isn't it? So yeah, I think we all need to be a bit more careful these days, and I get that, you know, some people take that way too far, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot that can be said about this, but I'm also very aware that maybe I'm not the best person to talk about it. I don't know. So yeah, I suppose this also assumes that services are easy to reach and are of a decent quality, which is probably often not the case. I would say it's incredibly rarely the case. Again, I can only speak from a British person's standpoint. We have the National Health Service in Britain, which is amazing. And for anyone that doesn't know what the NHS is, it's basically our healthcare, which is free at the point of service. So we pay a small, it is a small tax out of our wages or earnings or whatever. And for that, everybody, young, old, rich, poor, whatever, can walk into any hospital with any problem and go, I've broken my leg, or I don't even know, whatever. Why do people go to hospitals? Whatever those things are. And they say, come on in, and they help you. You know, for example, my girlfriend going into hospital going, we're having a baby. You know, there's no question of prices or costs or anything like that. It's just there. It's there to use. And I can't thank the staff at St Mary's Hospital, Manchester enough. They were absolutely phenomenal. However, when it comes to care in the community and social care stuff, I think, again, I don't want to get into too much politics because that's opening a whole other can of worms. But I do feel that for the last 10 to 15 years, these things have been squeezed to the point of almost collapsing, and I do feel that that's been quite a purposeful thing, because there are some very rich people that stand to make a lot more money if things really go to hell and get privatized and blah blah blah. So I think things like mental health services are in dire need for expansion, but there are also lots of charities, and in fact one that I've seen a lot of called Calm, which is for specifically for men. So if any of you watching this video do have any kind of mental health issues or anything along those lines, you know, if you're feeling down for whatever reason, and this is the point, is that, you know, if you do suffer from something like depression, you don't need a reason to feel down. You don't need a reason to be depressed. That is what depression is there is no reason. So if you're feeling depressed for no reason, then you're the person that needs to be seeking help. You're exactly the perfect person for this, to get help. So don't think, oh, well, they don't want me because I don't even know why I'm upset. Well, that is, you know, the fact that you don't know why you're upset is the bit to be concerned about. So I would say go to someone like the Calm website. In fact, I'm going to stick a link below this video because I've said them now. You know, visit someone like Calm, speak to them on the phone, speak to someone about them, and yeah, seek help, because there is help out there. And I know in America, seeing a therapist, for example, is like a normal thing that everybody does in America. In Britain, for some reason, we've got it into our heads as a culture that, oh, seeing a therapist, there must be something wrong. There's something wrong with you if you're talking to a therapist. Well, that really shouldn't be the case. And actually, why shouldn't we talk to a stranger and just have a bit of a vent, you know? I think it's an important thing that we should all be able to do. So there we go. Hopefully that's today's rant on mental health over with. I can also see that I'm hitting the 30-minute mark, so I'm going to reset again. Okay, I'm back. I've also had to change battery on the camera as well. So there we go. Alrighty, let's have a look. So we got as far as Zombo, we did Ricky John. So FanFan87, Ferrari, with a question mark. Never heard about this synth. Hola, Dom. High five. Simple and short question. What would your arguments, if you wanted to convince an Ableton user to switch to Bitwig, be? Let's make a parody of the "Sell Me This Pen" scene of DiCaprio, The Wolf of Wall Street. Great film. By the way, really want to test it. I know I should. You know what? I kind of asked a similar question to the director of Bitwig, who's also called Dom. And his response was essentially, if you're happy with Ableton, stay with Ableton. And I think I'm inclined to agree with that. I think as much as I love Bitwig, if there's nothing that you've seen from Bitwig videos or whatever that is grabbing you or making you want to change, don't change. Because if you're happy with Ableton, then stay happy with Ableton. Why, you don't have to change. So really, that's my honest answer. However, for me, I had issues fundamentally with Ableton. There were some odd things that were happening low down in MIDI, which I don't know if it's been fixed yet, but I know there were some serious issues with just the fundamentals in the way that the app had been developed, and I don't think it was any one person's fault or anything. It was just one of those things that, two different technologies changing over time, and one has a drastic change and the other didn't follow suit, and I think it just kind of whatever. Which then also led on to things like PDC issues and whatever. And so I wasn't 100% happy with Ableton at the time that Bitwig was coming out. And Bitwig solved all of those things for me. Again, because Bitwig was a newer DAW and was built from the ground up with this change in technology in mind, it just kind of became, I guess, easier for the devs there to kind of work with different technologies. So yeah, I won't go into huge details, it's all very nerdy, but that's kind of the crux of why I felt it was easy enough for me to go over to Bitwig. It also made a difference that I knew the guys running Bitwig, so I was able to ask for them to go, oh, can you, for example, have a default channel gain? And they implemented that, and then I said, oh, can I get K20 metering? And they implemented that. So there's a lot of stuff that I kind of went, oh, can we have this? And they just implemented it. So clearly Bitwig's the one for me, because they kept implementing stuff I wanted. However, I guess from where it is now with version 3, I mean, it is light years apart from all the other DAWs, I think. Genuinely, it's the fact that we can make our own synths and make our own effects in the grid, which I still haven't even explored properly yet. And I keep meaning, actually, I'll probably do one in a couple of weeks, a video on here. I want to maybe just come up with a sound or a synth sound that's maybe common in our sort of music, and I'm gonna maybe sit down and go, let's just make that sound in the grid and see how close we can get and see what we can do with it. Basically start building a synth almost in real time. It might be a small series of videos, but that's what I'm planning on doing, is basically we'll build a synth in the grid and I'll just hit record on the screen and we'll see what happens, see what we come out with. So yeah, that's in the pipelines. As for selling points, so I mean, that to me is a huge selling point. The fact that you can even think about doing, I know you've got Max for Live in Ableton, but for me personally, I was a Max user when they introduced Max for Live, and I was an Ableton Suite user. So I had Ableton Suite, which I think is what Max for Live came with, and I had the full Max MSP paid for license at the time of them launching. And I don't think I ever bothered using Max for Live because it just didn't really integrate very well. It was admittedly very CPU heavy. Well, I guess it's going to be because it's like a door within a door, so it's going to be heavy. Can't blame anyone for that. But it was just enough to put me off. And again, I kind of felt like there were little delay issues, and it just wasn't for me, basically. So it just never became a thing. Whereas using the grid, it just seems so much more intuitive because it's built in. It's part of the workstation, so it kind of makes more sense. So yeah, there we go. That's my answer on that. Jockmeyer, hey Dom, congrats to you and the family on the new arrival. No question this week. Just wanted to say that I sample vinyl all the time, and I use a cheap Newmark PT01. It works great, and I find nothing wrong with the quality. Granted, I make boom bap beats out of the samples, but I can't imagine you need a more expensive record player for making any other genre. There we go. So the Newmark PT01. Thanks for that. Francesco DiCarlo, thanks as always for answering. You're the man. Awesome. And of course, best wishes for the newcomer. Welcome. Thank you. Good question in the previous comments, but I'm interested in just one from me. Have you build up a personal template for your live gigs? If so, how is it, and do you prepare your tracks? So when you say live gigs, I'm guessing you mean fully live shows, which I've never done yet. So or unless you mean, well, you can't mean DJing, because DJing is just DJing. There is no template. I can see you've posted a link to a video. I'm just going to quickly see what it is. Turn the volume down so I don't get a copyright strike. Oh, that's me. Artist access behind the scenes. Okay. Just a thought about the other comments read here and elsewhere in this old video. DK tells how he took 20 years to find and build his own sound, and how he first imitated the sound of others, even knowing it was the wrong way. So, great inspiration. Let's think about it. Don't rush, don't procrastinate, be patient and play. Okay, so maybe I'm not sure what your question was, or how that relates to the video. I'm not sure. I'm a bit confused, if I'm honest. But in terms of template for live gigs, I've not done any fully live shows yet. I am hoping to, once I've got an album that is an actual real thing, I would like to be able to perform that album somewhat live. Clearly it's electronic dance music. Clearly it's not going to be 100% live, but I am looking into options of things like having a session musician join me, so making it more like an electronic band, I suppose. So yeah, again, I've no idea what templates will look like for that, but I'm pretty sure there'll be something. So yeah, and then I don't know why you've posted that video. Do you tell us how it took 20 years? Yeah, I don't know why you've posted that video, but thanks anyway. Yeah, there's no question attached to that, so I'm not sure if you're just saying it for the sake of saying it, or if it's a question that I've not understood, but anyway, whatever. Dreamstate42, hey Dom, congratulations on the birth of your baby, and all the best to you and your family. Thank you. Ferrari, high five. You having mentioned Bitwig in this video, are you already on 3.0, and why haven't you released some grid presets yet? Have a great weekend, and hopefully at least a few hours sleep each night. Yeah, sleep is kind of one of those things I wish I could dream about. Grid presets, yeah, well there we go. So I think I've literally already answered that about 2 minutes ago when I was saying that I haven't explored the grid as much as I feel I probably should have done. It does look amazing, and I will be doing some videos, and I guess if we put together a synth or whatever sound in the grid, then I should probably make those downloadable if I can. Yeah, so I'll probably do some presets at some point. I know there was talk between myself and Bitwig in doing some built-in preset stuff. Maybe that could tie in. I don't know. We'll see. Zombo. By the way, you got the wrong movie. I was talking about The Room. Oh, The Room, starring Tommy Wiseau. Great movie, 11 out of 10. The Room. Hang on then, because... So I was thinking of Room, I guess. Oh, the whole Highmark thing, I guess. Do you know what? I don't know if I've seen that. I don't think I have. Yeah, and you would have thought, I can see there's one of the top things here is how the worst movie ever became a Hollywood legend. Yeah, why haven't I seen that? As a man who loves B movies, that would make more sense. Right, okay, anyway, yeah. Yanis or Janice Lockmellis, congratulations, Dom, on the birth of your first child, and good luck. About my name, I think it should be written as Yanis. There we go. Yanis Lockmellis, to sound right. Yeah, that's fair. I never know with the J, because I feel like if it's of German descent or Eastern European descent, then it would be a silent J, a Y. Whereas if it's more Western European, then it would be a hard J. And then if it's maybe French, it would be a soft J. So yeah, anyway, there we go. That's language for you. Ferrari, high five. St. Nicholas, congratulations, Dom. Best wishes, Ferrari, high five. Nick Grievous, hi Dom, question. I wonder in these super saturated actual days if it would be clever to release something on a very small label first so it can help you to get local gigs and test your tracks and mix and master, evolving as a DJ. The small steps by steps normal approach versus being the best producer possible he can be, and way easier to stand out in that super saturated profession, the Skrillex approach. Do you know what? I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. Yes, I agree with you. I think it's 100% better to do step by step. And I've mentioned earlier on in this video that you're better off, if you set your end goal, you need to set stepping stones to get to that goal. But interesting you say the Skrillex approach, because Skrillex was already successful before he became Skrillex. And I think that people often forget that. He had probably already made those stepping stones and that step by step with his band. I forget what they were called, but they had some fairly big success. It wasn't, it wasn't a throwaway band. So I think that's worth bearing in mind. You need to go further back with Skrillex's career and look at where he really started and how did he get, how did he form that band? Well, did he form that band, or was he just a singer? I don't know. I've not cared enough to look into it, but those are the questions you need to ask, is how did he get that band to wherever they ended up? How did they get signed to whoever and whatever? Because by the time he created the name Skrillex and signed the whole Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites album to Joel, I should imagine he'd already got pretty much everything in place by that point. So so it's interesting you say about that sort of big, quickly standing out type thing. He'd probably already put in his years of craft in getting things like the mix and master evolving and all of that. So yeah, I like the fact that you used that as an example. I always find myself thinking, if I'm wasting time and a good opportunity on getting experience with constant local DJ gigs or labels, contracts and network, or fuck that and focus most of your energy on becoming the best you can be in sound design, composing music, etc., because everything besides that is a distraction. It really depends on what you want to do as an end goal. I mean, do you want to be touring the world as a DJ, or do you want to be sat in a studio designing sounds? Because they're two very different career paths. Aside from that, I get what you're saying is, do you aim for local DJing gigs or do you aim for big international gigs? I mean, I guess again, it's setting the goals. If you set the goals of big international gigs, but you need to start with the stepping stones of the smaller local gigs. And I think, if you look at how bands achieve huge success, how do you get attention? Well, the best way to get attention is to go to one of your local nights, get some bookings, and bring the biggest possible crowd you can get. If you look at how a lot of bands do it, they'll maybe tour a certain circuit, for the upcoming small bands. You'll look at, in the UK, for example, there's sort of maybe 50 or 60 key venues around the UK that most upcoming bands would sort of do a mini tour, maybe do 3 of them on a weekend or something, and earn next to nothing, keeping it fairly local. But they'd keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and it can take years to build up a fan base. But if you keep pushing it and keep getting your friends of friends, whatever, involved and enjoying it, then I think it's far easier to get more attraction from bigger promoters and whatever. If you're able to fill a 200-person capacity venue and sell out the tickets in a couple of days, then you could probably do the same for a 400-person capacity, or a 600, or an 800, or whatever, So yeah, I think that makes things just a bit easier. And as you say, you get to go, by doing that smaller scene, you're not only building up a decent fan base and a loyal following, I think you're also then given the opportunity to really hone in on what works, what doesn't work, and test things to a crowd, and you're only going to get better at it. That's something I never really got a chance to do myself, because I lived, out in the sticks as a child, and then moved to Bristol and then to Bournemouth, and I kind of built up a small following in each of these cities that I lived in, but I never stayed in a city long enough, and now I'm in Manchester. So there we go. There was an end to yours. So if you were starting right now, had been producing for 5 years, not professional, but almost close, nothing released, what would be your approach, or do you have a better idea? Very curious about your thoughts and insights on that. So yeah, so I've kind of just explained that. I think start small, aim, write your goals down, get a piece of paper and go, right, top goal. And I've always said you want 3 main goals in life. You want goal 1 to be, it'll probably never happen, it's crazy dream, whatever, end goal. For example, you want a #1 global smash hit single in a world tour, Goal number 2 is probably not going to happen, but it's not so crazy, and that could be a residency in Ibiza, or doing a UK tour, or whatever your home country is. And then goal number 3 would be something that's pretty much going to happen if you work hard enough, and that would be something like getting a local residency, or releasing a track on a small record label, or whatever. And then whatever, you choose your own time frame, but every 6 months or every year or whatever, you review those 3 goals, and just hopefully you've done goal number 3. So now you're on to goal number 2, and goal number 1 is now your goal number 2, which means you've got a free space up top to have a whole new crazy goal. And the idea is you keep, every year or whatever, you keep climbing up, or maybe slightly adjust the direction or whatever. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Raphael, Ferrari, high five, love it, gonna do that for sure. Thanks in advance, and for your patience. High five, Dom. Question. I wonder, in these super saturated actual days, oh no, you've just asked that. And that is it. Yeah, so there we go. That's that. Yeah, that is one hell of a long video. I think that's going to be like an hour and a half long. It's currently 12:30. I don't know why. I do this every week. Have you noticed? I go, oh, it's now 12:30. This video should be up on time, or whatever. And yet I'm speaking on the video. So, of course, you're going to know the answer, because you're watching the video and you started it at whatever time you started it, so I don't know why I do this. And I've noticed I do it every week, and I end up going, oh, this video should be on time today, and like you guys already know by the time you're watching it, because you're watching it, it's either on time or it's not. Whatever. Anyway, so yeah, thank you very much for watching this video, guys. If you've made it this far, genuinely you need some sort of reward. Yeah, let's find a keyword for you to comment to prove that you've made it this far into the video. I'm going to say Jimmy, because there's a video here that says every single heckle Jimmy Carr. Damn, that's going to be a long video as well then, because boy does he get heckled. Yeah, so there we go. That's that, I think. I don't think I can't think of anything else I need to say. Like I say, this is probably about an hour and 20 minutes now, so that's crazy long. Yeah, hopefully you can see my commitment and dedication to these videos, and hopefully any of you can show appreciation of that through Patreon. That's still up and running. Again, if you sign up for the $10, I am giving away, I can't even remember, was it 2 or 3, or was it even 4 sample packs? There's a bunch of sample packs. I'm probably going to add 1 or 2 to that soon, so anybody who is on the monthly subscription will automatically, I'll send them out. I send all these things out manually as well. And something else I discovered recently is that if you sign up at the end of a month, so basically they take payment on the 1st of every month. If you sign up at the end of a month, then you'll kind of be paying twice in close succession. So we're now at the 23rd. Just be aware that if you did sign up to the $10, then it would take $10 now and then $10 on the 1st of the month. Obviously that's up to you guys on whether you can afford that or not, but I'm incredibly grateful for anyone that does, because I'm hoping that what I'm going to do is, once this, if I can get this to a regular stage, what I'm hoping to do is to get the money from the Patreon account to be able to pay for equipment and travel and whatever is needed to get the podcast done. So I will eventually start doing long form podcasts, which will be me and another producer sat down. So the more money that comes in through the Patreon account, the more likely it is that I'm going to be able to get bigger and bigger name producers, because I know a lot of you have said things like, you know, other Mousetrap artists and stuff like No Manor and whatever. Well, you know, he's in LA, I think. Pretty sure he lives in LA. I'm in Manchester. One of us has to go to the other one for that to happen. He's not in the UK very often. I'm not in LA very often. So these are the things that I'm bearing in mind. I'm sort of drawing up lists of who's realistically going to be able to do these things. I think I've got about 2 seasons worth of names so far that I think will be really interesting. They're not necessarily all huge names, but they're different people from different bits of the music industry. So I've got a publisher, a booking agent, a manager, obviously various DJs and producers and nerds. So yeah, so there's a bit of everything in there. But as I say, I'm still unable to really get going on these just yet, although I will be aiming to hopefully get potentially a season done throughout October towards the end of the year. So I'm going to do a pilot hopefully around September time, and I'm just talking for the sake of talking now, so I'm going to end this video here. Hope you all have a brilliant weekend, and I'll see you again this time next week. Cheers.